You know, Alan Stanford does get overshadowed by Madoff, but he was way more colorful.
Government about a stock trade. In December of 2001, she abruptly sold nearly 4,000 shares of Imclone, worth $220.
They lived like kings, flashing wealth the rest of us could only dream of. But behind the lavish yachts and private jets lay a trail of deceit, shattered lives, and stolen billions. Today, the world watches as these master manipulators face justice. From Ponzi schemes to insider trading, their financial empires crumbled, exposing the true cost of their greed. Courtrooms packed, victims testify, and the fraudsters' once confident smirks fade. Will they finally pay for their crimes? Or will their power shield them once more? This is the moment when their carefully built facades collide with the truth.
In the city, Alan Stanford is apparently no stranger to temptation in Las Vegas.
Our Alan Stanford once lived a life that seemed to have no limits. He had the money, the fame, and the luxurious lifestyle that most people could only dream of. With a net worth nearing $2 billion, he made himself the face of a fake offshore bank, promising investors big returns on their money. But it was all a lie. Behind the glitz and glamour was a man who had scammed people out of an astonishing $7.2 billion.
He estimated that Stanford had defrauded investors of $7 billion through his Ponzi scheme.
The courtroom scene was a far cry from the world Stanford had built for himself. Gone were the private jets and five-star hotels. Now, he sat at the defendant's table, looking smaller, more vulnerable, and very much out of his depth. The once confident man, who had charmed everyone around him, now found himself under the harsh spotlight of the law, with his luxurious lifestyle replaced by grim accusations and the cold weight of his crimes.
Lifestyle. Convicted on 13 felony counts, he has long since exhausted his criminal appeals, but now from prison he is single-handedly managed.
As the trial began, the room was filled with tension. Victims who had once trusted Stanford to handle their money were now sitting in the courtroom ready to tell their stories. Some were business owners, some were families who had invested their life savings. All of them had been sold the dream of easy wealth, only to watch it all disappear. They stood in front of the judge and spoke of how they had lost everything: homes, savings, businesses, because Stanford had lied to them.
The line is not moving, and we here so many hours, and the line not moving. The line don't give us our money. What?
Their words were raw, filled with anger and disbelief. They had been promised something they could never have imagined would turn out to be a scam. One woman spoke of how she had invested everything she had, hoping to secure a better future for her children.
They were ill and they died pretty much poverty-stricken. The whole thing is very sad, and it's sad for Stanford's family.
But after Stanford's fraud was exposed, she was left with nothing but regret. A businessman stood up next, saying that he'd trusted Stanford so completely that he'd encouraged others to invest, only to see his friends lose their hard-earned money too. Then came the employees who had worked for Stanford. These were the people who had seen the inside of his operation, the ones who knew just how much deceit had gone into keeping the scam going. They spoke of how Stanford had used his charm to manipulate everyone around him, making them believe in a future that was never going to happen. They revealed the tricks and the lies, showing how Stanford had forged documents, hid the truth, and used fake numbers to keep his investors in the dark.
Fraud is one of the biggest scams ever if you just consider the numbers. $7 billion on paper, around $5 billion of that in actual losses, almost all to retirees who didn't have.
As the trial went on, Stanford's defense team tried to downplay the impact of his actions, claiming he was just a businessman who had made mistakes. But the damage had already been done. The victims had painted a picture of a man who had ruined lives, all for the sake of his own greed. And when a former business partner took the stand, it was clear that Stanford had known exactly what he was doing. He had thought he was untouchable, that his money and influence would protect him from any consequences. But the truth was undeniable. The evidence was overwhelming, and the courtroom drama reached its peak when the judge called for a recess. Everyone in the room knew that Stanford's once glamorous life was over. He had been living a lie, and now he was finally facing the reality of his actions. In the end, our Alan Stanford's empire came crashing down. He was no longer the man with the money and power. He was just another fraudster being held accountable for the damage he had caused. The gavel came down and Stanford was left to face the consequences of a life built on lies and deception. The victims, though scarred by their losses, knew that at least in this courtroom, justice had been served. Martha Stewart had it all. An empire built on home goods, cooking shows, and a picture-perfect lifestyle that made her the queen of domesticity. She had millions of fans, a TV show adored by millions, and a business worth billions. But in 2001, everything came crashing down when she was caught up in a massive insider trading scandal.
Today, Martha Stewart was indicted on criminal charges relating to an insider trading scandal that began more than a year ago.
What was once her world of comfort, calm, and elegance was now replaced by a courtroom, a jury, and the harsh light of criminal charges. The case against Martha Stewart was a shock to everyone who had known her as the perfect homemaker and business mogul. The charge? Insider trading. It was alleged that she had sold her shares of the company Clone Systems based on a tip-off from a broker, avoiding a significant loss before the company's stock price plummeted. The accusation was simple. Martha Stewart had used confidential information to make a profitable decision, a move that left a stain on her otherwise pristine image. The charges were serious, and the court proceedings were about to push her spotless reputation to the test. Inside the courtroom, Martha Stewart sat with a calm, poised demeanor, her signature composed style. But beneath the surface, the tension was palpable. For someone who had built a world of perfection, now she was facing the possibility of losing it all. Her business, her brand, her reputation. The courtroom was filled with reporters and cameras, all eager to capture every moment of this high-profile case. The people who had admired her for years were now watching closely, wondering if their beloved lifestyle guru would lose her crown. The prosecution came out swinging. They painted Stewart as a woman who believed the rules didn't apply to her, using the evidence from the sale of her Clone stock. They argued that Martha had acted on insider information she should never have had access to. The prosecutors were determined to show that Stewart wasn't just a victim of circumstance, but a calculated figure who knowingly engaged in illegal trading. They brought out emails, phone records, and financial documents to demonstrate that she had received the tip-off from her broker and that her actions weren't innocent mistakes, but deliberate ones. Martha's defense team, however, was just as determined to protect her. They argued that she had acted in good faith, claiming that Stewart sold her stock because of a personal decision to protect her portfolio, not because of insider information. They painted her as a hard-working, ethical businesswoman who was simply caught in a misunderstanding. They emphasized that Martha had never intended to break the law and that the entire situation was the result of a series of unfortunate events. Her lawyers also suggested that the case was a personal attack, perhaps because of her success, pointing to how the media had painted her as a target because of her fame. The courtroom drama reached its peak when Martha herself took the stand. Wearing a crisp white blouse and a composed expression, she calmly explained her actions, insisting she didn't use insider information and that her decision to sell her shares was based purely on public knowledge and personal judgment. As she spoke, the tension in the room grew. For the first time in the trial, it was clear that Martha was fighting for her life, not just for her freedom, but her legacy. Her words seemed genuine, but could they undo the accusations against her?
I have been choked and almost suffocated to death during that time, all the while more concerned about the well-being of others than for myself.
As the trial went on, it became clear that the case wasn't just about insider trading. It was about the way Martha Stewart was seen by the world. Was she the perfect businesswoman who had simply made a mistake? Or was she someone who thought she was above the law? The final verdict came down hard. Martha Stewart was convicted on charges of obstruction of justice and making false statements, though she was acquitted of the more serious insider trading charges. She was sentenced to 5 months in prison, 5 months of home confinement, and 2 years of probation. The news hit hard. The woman who had taught us how to entertain guests, fold a napkin, and bake the perfect pie was now a convicted criminal. The scandal shook her empire, but it didn't destroy it. Martha's time in prison was a hard one, but she emerged stronger.
Martha Stewart, the doyen of all things domestic, was in court again today, where 2 huge department stores, Macy's and JCPenney's.
She rebuilt her brand, coming back to the public eye with renewed focus and determination. Though the scandal had tarnished her image, it didn't completely strip her of her crown. Martha Stewart would continue to reign in the world of domesticity, but now with a more human story to tell. One of a fall, a fight, and a remarkable comeback.
And I'll be back. I will be back. Whatever I have to do in the next few months, I hope the months go by quickly. I'm used to all.
Carlos Ghosn was once the man who seemed to have it all, a charismatic, sharp-eyed leader who turned Nissan around. He became a legend in the business world. He was hailed as the Sun King of the auto industry, celebrated for his ability to save companies from the brink of collapse. But behind his polished public image, a darker story was unfolding. As the CEO of Nissan, Ghosn's rise came at a cost. allegations of financial misconduct soon surfaced, and they threatened to unravel the empire he had built.
Amongst other things. So that's all we know at this stage in terms of what is the investigation. It was an internal investigation following a whistleblower report. Now,
the courtroom was where this drama would unfold in the most intense and high-stakes way imaginable. As Ghosn sat in the defendant's chair, his confidence seemed shaken. Gone was the powerful figure who had once been courted by world leaders and celebrated in boardrooms. Now he was facing a criminal trial that could send him to jail for years. The courtroom was packed with reporters, eager to catch every moment of the spectacle, and every word from the witness stand felt like it carried the weight of Ghosn's future. The charges against him were severe. The Japanese prosecutors claimed that Ghosn had misused company funds for personal benefit. Millions of dollars spent on luxury homes, expensive gifts, and lavish lifestyles. They painted a picture of a man who had abused his power to enrich himself at Nissan's expense, while the company's employees struggled. The prosecution's case was backed by damning evidence. There were emails, documents, and financial records that seemed to prove Ghosn had been diverting company money for personal gain. One of the most chilling pieces of evidence was a series of payments that were linked directly to Ghosn's personal expenses, including a massive payment for a yacht he had bought in Lebanon. As the prosecutor presented each piece of evidence, Ghosn's defense team was forced to watch as their client's reputation took hit after hit.
That leads to the conviction. There has to be other supporting evidence, and part of the reason that the prosecutors would have kept Mr. Ghosn or any other defendant in detention as long as they do is to allow them to build a case.
But Ghosn wasn't ready to go down quietly. His defense team immediately painted him as a victim of a corporate conspiracy. They argued that the charges against him were part of a plot to remove him from his powerful position at Nissan and Renault. The courtroom buzzed as the defense suggested that rivals within the company had orchestrated the scandal to discredit him. They claimed that Ghosn had been unfairly targeted and that the whole situation was a political and corporate power play, not a case of financial crime. They pointed to his efforts to unite Nissan and Renault as the root of the conflict, claiming that certain executives at Nissan were not happy with his leadership and had set him up. The courtroom drama escalated when Ghosn himself took the stand. In a calm and measured voice, he denied all the accusations. He looked straight at the judge, his eyes steely with determination. He admitted to making mistakes, but he insisted he had done nothing criminal. He described the culture of Nissan as one that expected extravagant spending from its top executives, implying that his lavish lifestyle had been sanctioned by the company. As he spoke, it became clear that Ghosn believed he was the victim of a system that had turned on him.
Company, you don't gonna get results. If you don't get people engaged, you don't get results. If you get people burned out, you're not gonna get results. So somehow...
But then, just as the tension was at its peak, the case took a wild turn. Just as prosecutors were about to present their final piece of evidence, news broke that Ghosn had escaped Japan. The courtroom went silent. How had a man facing such serious charges managed to slip out of the country? It was like a real-life spy thriller.
Much candidate to help you. I was lucky, and I need to, as much as possible, protect them. Right.
Ghosn's escape, hidden in a musical instrument box, was the stuff of legend. The plot thickened, and suddenly, the trial wasn't just about financial misconduct. It became about a man on the run, evading justice in a way that shocked the world. As the trial wrapped up, the dramatic courtroom battle was far from over. Ghosn's dramatic escape added a layer of intrigue and mystery to the case. With international authorities now involved in his capture, the fight between Ghosn and his accusers would go on for years, leaving many wondering, was he really a victim of a corporate conspiracy? Or had he been caught red-handed in a web of corruption? The only thing that was clear was that the man once hailed as the savior of Nissan had now become one of the most infamous figures in corporate history.
But not by Ghosn himself, instead the Japanese legal system. Ghosn had been barred from seeing his wife and what Takano...
In a stunning courtroom drama that shocked the world, the case of Nigerian businessman Emmanuel Nwood took center stage. Known for his charm and persuasive skills, Nwood had once convinced international investors that he was behind the construction of a state-of-the-art airport in Lagos. The only problem? The airport didn't exist. Nwood had sold a multi-million-dollar project based on nothing more than fabricated blueprints and false promises, leading to a massive financial fraud that left investors furious. Inside the courtroom, the tension was palpable. Nwood, once a smooth-talking entrepreneur, sat in the defendant's chair, his suit pressed, but his usual air of confidence was gone. As the prosecutors laid out the case, they painted him as a master manipulator, a man who had duped not just individuals, but entire companies into believing they were investing in one of the most ambitious infrastructure projects in Africa. They presented fake contracts, forged documents, and testimonies from victims who had been swindled out of millions.
Of Renault, and then did the same with Nissan. It's made his fall from grace all the more dramatic.
The courtroom drama reached its peak when Nawood's defense tried to argue that he had been the victim of a conspiracy, that he was framed by rivals in the business world who wanted to take him down. But the prosecution fired back with damning evidence, financial records showing that Nawood had used the funds for personal luxuries instead of building the airport he promised. The courtroom was on edge as Nawood's fate hung in the balance. In a shocking turn, Nawood took the stand, his calm demeanor betraying the gravity of his situation. He denied any intent to deceive, claiming that the project was a work in progress and that the airport would be completed, despite all the evidence suggesting otherwise. As the final verdict was announced, the courtroom fell silent. Nawood was convicted, his empire of lies crumbling before him. The fraudster had finally met his day in court. The tales of these financial fraudsters serve as a harsh reminder that no one is above the law, no matter how charming or powerful they seem. From the fraudulent schemes of R. Allen Stanford to the billion-dollar lies of Emmanuel Nawood, the truth always has a way of catching up with those who think they can outsmart the system. These cases show the devastating consequences of greed and deception, and how even the most successful can fall from grace. If you found these stories shocking, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you think got what they deserved, and who got away with too much? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of high-stakes crime and courtroom drama. Stay tuned for the next episode, because the truth is often stranger than fiction.